Hello and welcome to the first HEARTcare podcast and learn. This coached podcast series will not only teach you about important concepts related to your workplace well-being, it will also prompt you to be active physically and mentally engaged. My name is Dr. Austri Kendrick, and I have been studying compassion, fatigue, and burnout in educational workers since early 2020. This podcast series is one of the outcomes of my research program, as participants have asked for different ways to learn how to feel better at their own pace and in their own space. Before we get started, choose a walking path that is about 2 to 3 kilometers in length. Keep an eye out for tripping hazards and make sure you're dressed for the weather. As my Norwegian mother used to say, "Det finner ikke darling vær, bare darling klær." There isn't bad weather, only bad clothing. Not going outside? No problem. Jump on your stationary bike, treadmill, elliptical trainer, or start your laundry. Choose an activity that will keep you busy for about 20 minutes. If you have a tracking device, press start and let's get going. Today's episode will introduce you to compassion and the first workplace mental health hazard, compassion fatigue. We'll talk about symptoms and how you can start to feel better. As you listen to this first song, I'd like for you to reflect on these questions. What is the best part of your job? What do you enjoy? What brings you happiness? If your response is like other educational workers, like teachers, instructors, or principals, you might have thought about caring for kids, helping them learn about a subject area, like my own, phys ed and English, or making a difference in society. Compassion is the noticing, feeling, and acting to relieve the suffering of others and is the basis for creating safe and caring classrooms, schools, and workplaces. The pleasure felt from providing care for others is known as compassion satisfaction, which can be sustaining and will help us stay committed to carrying out compassionate acts. But providing crisis or trauma work as a part of our jobs can interfere with good functioning. As you continue to walk, think about these questions. Have you witnessed suffering as a part of your job? How did that make you feel? Charles Figley, Paul Valant, and Stam, noted researchers in the field of secondary traumatic stress, differentiated between crisis and trauma work. Crisis work is provided when you go through a traumatic event, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, a forest fire, or violence in the classroom, with your clients or students and colleagues. And trauma work is provided when you listen to or process a traumatic event experienced by someone else. So you weren't actually there, but they're telling you about it. Figley called your reaction or your feelings after doing this work as secondary or vicarious traumatization. Your own response depends on the severity, frequency, and duration of the traumatic event, as well as the outcome and your ability to influence that outcome. In educational settings like schools or university, instructors, staff, and teachers may provide very little crisis or trauma work, or they might provide some every day with multiple different students. So as you keep walking, consider, have you had to help a student or colleague during a traumatic event or after one? What was the impact on you? Did you feel able to help them, or did you feel helpless? The symptoms of compassion fatigue, or secondary traumatic stress, include feeling hopeless, avoiding situations that remind you of the initial traumatic event, disassociation, mental and physical exhaustion, and replaying the traumatic event, or your ability to respond repeatedly in your mind. You may already have good coping strategies, but if you're feeling overwhelmed, your usual coping strategies may not be enough. Having to provide crisis or trauma work may be an inescapable part of your daily work, but you can take steps to ensure that you recover and that your coping skills are not overwhelmed. The first thing you can do is something my assistant principal used to call rallying your troops. This is thinking about the people that can help you when you're feeling stressed or distressed. So who do you think of as a personal support? You might think of a family member, a friend, or a spiritual advisor like a priest. In my own life, my biggest supporters are my husband, my son, and my sisters. I try to spend some time with them each day, sometimes just even via text, because being with them and listening to them helps me to feel loved. Another thing to think about is your professional support network. So who do you think of as your professional supports or the people at work who can help you? You might think of your boss or principal, a colleague, or a trained mentor like a partner teacher or someone similar. When I was a full-time teacher in a high school, I used to chat with the school librarian when I was feeling frustrated or needing help. She was invaluable and helped me to find good resources, not only for teaching and learning, but also helped me to think about different ways that I could solve any problems I was facing. So as you continue walking, and as you listen to this next song, I want you to visualize all the people who can support you in both your personal and professional support networks if you need a helping hand. Compassion stress and compassion fatigue are known psychological hazards, and there are available treatments. You do not have to suffer in silence. If you're worried about your mental and emotional health, activate your personal support network or your professional support network as soon as you finish this podcast. Reach out to speak to a trusted friend or make an appointment to meet with a qualified therapist or your family doctor. You should be by this time making your way back to your home base. For this last little bit, I want you to try moving a bit faster. Get your heart rate up so that you can feel more benefits of taking this walk or using your stationary bike or finishing up that laundry. Try to look around you and pick out as many birds or other animals that you can see from your vantage point. So now that you can identify the symptoms of compassion fatigue, one key risk factor, which is the provision of crisis and trauma work, and the first step to take towards recovery, which is identifying personal and professional supports, you can start to feel better at work. On the next podcast, we'll be discussing a second psychological hazard, burnout. Until that time, visit the HEARTcare Educators website at www.heartcareeducators.ca for more information and resources. And in the words of Sarah Barker, the sky isn't the limit. The sky has no limit.